I got one last day in, I think, on the boat before the weather starts to turn. I keep saying that in every video. I'm like, okay, the weather's just about to turn, about to turn. It doesn't turn. It's still nice. So maybe I should just keep saying it. Maybe the weather will stay nice. I did another day of coaching calls, and we were talking about something that I think is one of the biggest pains in the ass for most accountants is when they finally get big enough and they start hiring staff, is dealing with staff HR issues is a very difficult, frustrating and challenging scenario. And so, you know, when I had my accounting practice, I lived by one rule: if something went wrong, it was always my fault. It's always my fault. And as the owner, that's the reason why, and I'll explain to you in a second here why it is. But that's one part of it. The other part was, if something did go wrong, I never ever got upset with my staff, ever. If anything, when something went wrong, I went, "This is fantastic," and they'd look at me and go, "What?" And I said, "Well, now we can learn from it. Now we can see what went wrong. We can fix it, and all the rest of that." And they were just like, "Oh, this is great." So I created this culture of, it was never wrong. Like, it was never wrong to be wrong. So you never got in trouble for having something go wrong. But I was intolerant of us not learning from our mistakes. So it's like, we could make mistakes and I had no problem with it. But if someone kept making the same mistake over and over again, then I was intolerant of it. And that'll get me back to the first point where I said it's always my fault. So I was having some coaching calls today, and it was a same theme with a handful of my coaching call clients, the accounting firms that I work with. And they were talking about the problems with getting files out the door, get them done. And, you know, I call it GFOD, get the files out the door, get them out the door. And I said, if there's a problem with the files getting out the door, it's always your fault. And they're like, well, why is it my fault? And I said, well, you either haven't explained the situation. So I have this video, and you can look it up. It's called the task delegation. When you delegate a task to someone, you have to do three things. One, you have to clearly outline the detail, what they need to do. Number two, you need to give them a deadline. And number three, give them a consequence. So every clearly outlined. So if you need files done by a certain date, you train your staff, train them, give them a detail. This is what needs to be done, this by this date. If the staff, here's the kicker. Here's where it's my fault or your fault if you're an owner of an accounting firm. If it doesn't get done, you've got one of two problems. Either you haven't explained the situation to the person properly, so you haven't done a task delegation properly. You haven't told them exactly when it's supposed to be done. You haven't trained them on the task. They don't have the skill sets. It's still your fault because you should have trained them. Or you're assuming they know it, so then it's still your fault. Number two, or you have the wrong person on the bus. So if the person's incapable of doing the task at said job, then you shouldn't keep them on your team. And this isn't tough love. This is just facts of running an accounting practice, or any business for that matter. It's that if you have the wrong people on the bus, get them off the bus. But you have to be brutally honest with yourself first and say, did I really train them properly? Do they have all the information? Have I clearly outlined what I need done, when it needs to be done by, and the consequences of it not getting done? If you've done all those things, then you might have to refer to the fact and say, okay, the person is not a right fit. But in more cases than not, we haven't done a good job of actually outlining specifically what is being done and actually delegating the outcomes to the person. So that's a whole nother video that I can do on outcomes, but maybe I'll save that for another time. But for now, if you're having problems with HR, and we're getting down to, here in Canada, the September 30th filing deadlines are like, it's been the tax season from hell up here, and the poor accountants, they're just dying. Well, the accountants that are not on the Accountant Success Formula program are dying. Those that are on the ASF model, they're not, because we've fixed the accounting firm model. They don't have that stressor. But for those of you who are dying, you understand this tax season from hell. It's gone on forever and ever and ever. There is a way out. If you're interested, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you to see if the ASF model is a fit for you. So there you go. Remember, HR, it's always your fault. So I'm Eric Solbach, and wherever you're watching this, please scroll down, leave a comment for me, and stay tuned for more success tips to come.